So everything is about hoping for a magic bean to come along and cure everybody of cancer simultaneously. You know, they love guys like Doug Flutie or, you know, this guy now at the New England Patriots. Who was the quarterback?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, right? There's the magic beans, you see. In France, they wake up, they already know they have a great lifestyle, great food, great society. They are the only indispensable nation in the world, not America. I mean, France is indispensable. It is truly unique. But they have something to look forward to, you know, good health. America, and cheese, and, you know, ménage, fromage, sex with cheese. But in America, no one looks forward to anything. They wake up very, oh my God, it's another day. It's not morning in America anymore. It's more like one big cemetery, and I'm going to put one foot into it, except for these magic beans. Oh, maybe Mark Zuckerberg will hand me a magic bean of virtual reality, and I'll feel good. Please? So it makes no sense. Culturally, they're not amenable to a health. Plus, it would mean giving blacks health care, and no white person in America wants that.
Well, so let's move on to the story I'm talking about. So here, as I said, it's already been solved. France, you use it as an example because that's quite good. Medicare for all is essentially what they have. Basically,
well,
that's
they have
what
I said. I mentioned France.
You
and
did.
you said I wasn't germane to your conversation.
I know, but
you just mentioned what I just mentioned.
No, we're talking about the actual structure, not the culture, the structure of the system, and the structure is Medicare for all. So it is the government basically runs the insurance companies. There's various groups within the government, and then you have private health insurance to pay to cover the costs that your government health insurance, just like Medicare, if you're on Medicare, the government will only cover, you know, 70, 80% of certain procedures, and you have to have, you know, a private health insurer to cover the remainder. Well, that's kind of like what France has, except for they also set the price of what they'll pay for an MRI. So there's not a $5,000 MRI in Perpignan and a $400 one up in Brittany. So there's a uniform price across the thing. So.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, the old people, they get Medicare for all. I know because I'm an old person. It's not sexist or ageist for me to say that because I'm practically an old person. I'm practically on Medicare. They should give Medicare for young people because they should be out there entrepreneurially starting companies and not having to pay through the nose for their frickin' health insurance.
So going back to the article where they're saying, well, it's really complex. Nobody knows how to sort out this healthcare system, and Trump and Paul Ryan are having a hard time, just like Obama had a hard time. And deep down in the article, they mention that, quote, the deeper problem for the Republicans as a matter of policy as well as politics is that the healthcare system is less dysfunctional than it was in 2010. Fewer Americans lack coverage. Costs are no longer soaring. Americans who get coverage through Medicare, Medicaid, or their employers are mostly satisfied. Then they go on to say, those who have to go onto the marketplace unsubsidized, they're not so happy. So you're always going to have this situation where you have multiple bureaucracies. So you have the Veterans Administration bureaucracy, which is a lot like what the UK has, a government-run health care system. Then you have the Medicare bureaucracy, which is like France's system, which is a government-run insurance system, and then you have the employer-run private insurance networks, and then you have these marketplace things. So you have 4 bureaucracies, I count there, and everybody's treated differently. And to sustain the system, the chumps on the unsubsidized Obamacare marketplace are what everybody has to rely on, those guys not falling apart and like just ditching the system.
Well, you make a good point there. You've identified 4 separate bureaucracies.
Yes.
All working in conflict.
Kafkaesque.
With each other to expand costs, and the administrative costs on healthcare has risen exponentially.
Yes.
The number of doctors is basically flatline. Plus, what I'm talking about is culturally indifferent in America to health. People are drinking and eating themselves to death every day. They don't seem to mind. And there's a racial element to it. And there's also this magic trick that was performed by the federal government to convince one group of society, mostly people like me, to pay for the health care for another group of society and take the government out of it, which is not sustainable. It just makes me look at Trump and wonder well, you know, if he just fires everybody, who cares? The Constitution is still there. Just blow the whole thing apart. This is what I try to explain to my friend Alec Baldwin, who doesn't follow me anymore on Twitter. Alec, what I was trying to explain is just blow everything up. The Constitution is still there. You don't have to get all, you know, up in my grits.
Speaking of blowing up, there is the Valiant share price. This is also part of the problem of the U.S. healthcare system. So in every other system, remember I showed you that chart there at the top of the show where everybody lives longer for half the price that Americans do. Remember, here's Americans spending twice as much as everybody else, living a lot less longer. Well, the reason why, those other nations, whether it's Canada, France, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, UK, they all negotiate as one for all of their people with the
because they're culturally predisposed to it.
Okay, let's look at this chart. Here's Valiant. This is their stock price over the past 2 years. That mark right there, like where it started to drop, that is when Hillary Clinton tweeted that she was going to go after them because they had increased their drug prices. I'll show you the tweet, the headline from 2016. Hillary Clinton says she's going after Valiant in new campaign ad. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton released a new campaign saying she was going to go after the embattled firm. The 30-second spot was titled Predatory and features Clinton town hall from January in which she recounts an attendee's experience with steep Valiant price increases. Clinton describes how the woman's therapy went from a price tag of $180 for 10 shots in the 1980s to $14,700 for the same quantity today. This doesn't happen in other nations. It happens in the U.S. because they allow this, and it's predatory.
Yeah, whoa. Valiant, isn't that the subject of a
Bill Ackman
hedge fund
massive loss, $3 billion
attempted, you know, takeover attempt? I mean,
he was buying it all the way down.
Right. Well, that's what going to Harvard Business School. That's why Zuckerman dropped out of Harvard Business School.
Zuckerberg.
So he wouldn't end up like Bill Ackman and end up with a $3 billion loss on his predatory hedge fund position in Valiant. But what's their big product? They have a single, like
no, they have another product too.
It's like one big one is like Botox or
no, that's
Viagra.
No, they have loads of stuff.
No, they have one big one though.
I don't know what it is, but this one in particular, that was for migraine headaches. Then there's another one that they have for lead poisoning. They increased that.
But the point is that the hedge fund guys are making money jerking around with the stock price. That's the healthcare system in America. It doesn't have anything to do with healthcare. It's about creating an equity for Wall Street to toss around like a toy amongst a bunch of, you know, the animal spirits. The animal spirits are rabid dogs. You know, Bill Ackman's like,
Okay, well, if that's making money, well, I guess $3 billion in losses.
He just bought a $100 million penthouse.
Yeah, and he's getting divorced and has to hand it to his wife or somebody.
Thank God somebody's running this guy in.
But by the way, you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg. We are in the Pittsburgh Roundhouse. This is a local bar in Pittsburgh.
Is that where we are?
And Mark Zuckerberg was here only a week ago. Not here, but right down the street, 5 minutes up the road.
The average wealth of everybody in this town went up by $1 billion.
At Allen and Company, he was here. We're going to find out what's going on because this research triangle, you know, I think there's a big stuff going to happen here. But, you know, going back to why the healthcare all the politicians, all the Beltway media tried to act like this, so complex, and they don't know how to figure out how to resolve the situation. I mentioned that in the U.S., these pharmaceutical companies are allowed to charge predatory prices.
Yes.
In Canada, they can't. And talking about Valiant, here's a headline. MDs, that's doctors, say U.S. costs for Valiant's lead poisoning drug are 33,000% more than Canada's. Using the playbook of Mylan, Turing, and Well, their own company, Valiant Pharmaceuticals has hiked the price of yet another life-saving treatment to astronomical values. This time it's calcium EDTA, a lead poisoning treatment that costs U.S. hospitals and U.S. poison control centers about $500 for a packet of 6 ampules, which is 6 grams, before 2012 when Valiant acquired the drug. Poison control experts now say the U.S. centers pay about $5,000 per gram compared to $15 per gram for Canadians purchasing from a French company, a 33,300% difference. In a 6-year period, they increased their price by 7,200%. So why can't we do like Canada does? Why can't we get the same price? Why do we have to get a bad deal all the time?
Well, again, it's culturally acceptable to have a workable healthcare system in Canada because there's a premium on mental health, there's premium on physical health. In America, there's no such premium on physical or mental health. You have hedge funds who treat the drug business and the equity business like their plaything. and they get money from the Fed at 0% interest. If they make a mistake, then they get bailed out by the federal government. They buy $190 million penthouses in Manhattan. They get their pictures on magazines, and they're worshipped like gods. America worships the hedge fund crook. In Canada, they worship, you know, more like civil servants, normal people. It's a normal functioning society. America's a freak show.
Well, okay, you can cast all the aspersions you want. I'm just saying it's all there, right there in a simple chart. The answer is not complex, it's not cultural, it's not anything but simple mathematics.
Look, I mean, I can create a drug called cast aspersions for a condition called aspergimania, and I can become a billionaire in 3 months if I was a psychotic like the people at Valiant and Bill Ackman. Anyway, we got to go to a break. We'll think about that. Don't go away. Much more coming your way.
It's now almost 3 years since the Russian Empire joined World War I. The soldiers are fed up. All they want to do is to return home, alive. Anti-army aggravation is on the rise in Russia. In Moscow and Petrograd, thousands demand peace and question the Tsar's authority. Their discontent would become a revolution that consumed the Russian Empire.
Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to go to Gerald Celente of the Trends Journal. Here's the latest cover of the Trends Journal. This is the place to be. Hey, Gerald, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Now, first, before I talk about interest rates and the Fed, I want to talk about World War I and deglobalization and the fact that Scotland wants to get out of the UK and the fact that Europe is breaking up. And it looks like globalization's over and we're heading for a global war. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I'm not sure about the global war yet, because if we're headed for it, you know, it was nice talking to you. We'll never talk again. I mean, this will be, you know, really the war to end all wars. But the anti-globalization trend is real. I mean, that's why they elected Trump in the States. It was the message. Certainly it wasn't the messenger. I mean, we had an election here where we had both candidates with negativity ratings of over 60%. So you see what's going on in France with Le Pen, and in the Netherlands, and in Italy with Cinque Stelle, the five-star movement, the Brexit, the exit, and Greece and Spain. So people are tired of globalization because it's only enriched the rich, or the filthy rich, I should say. And I'm not making that up. You look at the Oxfam study, where they're showing that, 62 people have more money than half the world's population combined. since 2009 to now, at the end of the so-called recession, or the end of the so-called, it was a recession, but the so-called end of it, a fact is that 95% of the wealth went to the 1%, and that Obama bragged about the 10 million jobs he created. Well, according to the Harvard-Princeton study, 95% of those jobs are temporary work. So anti-globalization, anti-multilarization, it's real, and you're going to see major movements. As for the war, I mean, it's heating up now between China and South Korea, that the United States put in that defensive missile system. You're looking what's going on with every day the Russians are coming, and they're blaming Russia for what's going on in Ukraine, and that's ready to heat up again. So, you know, the tinderbox is hot. But I do believe that, you know, if we go to war, it won't be World War III. It'll be the war that Einstein warned about when they asked him what weapons will be used to fight World War III. He said, I don't know. He said, but they'll be using sticks and stones to fight World War IV.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so you've got these countries now that are at each other's throats, really. You've got deglobalization going on, and this wealth and income gap that you point to as the driver for the populist movements, which is driving this deglobalization, fractionalization, now we'll talk about the Federal Reserve Bank. It's the most influential central bank in the world. It's proven itself time and time again to be in the service of the bankers, the banksters. They feed the wealth and income gap, and yet they pretend to have some other mandate other than to feed the extraordinarily wealthy bankers at the tippity top. They've come out with a quarter-point raise in rates, and against a backdrop of GDP shrinking, and it's the first time really, or one of the few times that they've raised rates during a time of GDP shrinking that we're seeing right now. What's going on here? Where do you see this going, Gerald?
Well, it looks like they're going to raise rates 2 more times this year, but you pointed out it's a time of shrinking GDP. But even with the real rate when adjusted for inflation, it's still very low. I mean, what are we talking about? You know, 3 rate hikes in over 11 years, and at the grand total of combined 75 basis points. So we all know that, and going back to, you know, making the filthy rich filthier richer, is that the low rates have only helped with the stock buybacks at record rates and merger and acquisition activity, because you're borrowing money, the big guys, for virtually nothing. So it's still going on. And then you know, look what's going on in Europe. I mean, they didn't raise rates at the last ECB meeting. So the rates are still generally low. And what are they talking about? You know, maybe pushing them up to 3% by, you know, the end of 2019. So in reality, they're still very low. And I think you saw that reaction with gold. You know, it's buy the fact and sell the rumor. And gold prices moved up immediately after the Fed announced on Wednesday that they were going to raise rates. So I think the prospects is for more of the same, but worse.
Yeah, well, gold has the added problem of there being many, many, many times more gold futures contracts in the world than there are actual gold reserves or gold deposits in the world. And the futures market, which is, again, dictated and controlled and manipulated by the central banks, has been proven time and time again, it has trouble breaking out of the whatever price that the central banks want. Remember, banks like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, it's been proven they pick a price that they want to see a market trade to, and then they hit the algorithmic trading button on the floor of the exchange and one of the various exchanges, and all the fake trades go in to get to that price. So we no longer have price discovery that's based on supply and demand. It's price discovery that's dictated to by central authorities. So it's kind of an American version of a Soviet Union approach to economics. And is Trump now, who's been elected to combat the globalists, he's putting in the Goldman Sachs bankers in his cabinet. Is he draining the swamp, or is he restocking the swamp? Was this the biggest joke of all time? What do you think, Gerald?
Well, I mean, the whole election's the biggest joke of all times. It's the presidential reality show. I mean, just go back to the campaign. You know, no real issues were discussed, just one-liners. How are you going to get rid of ISIS? I'm going to bomb the hell out of them. Okay. I mean, that's a clear policy. So in talking about draining the swamp, I do believe that again, looking for the things the way they are, the reason the markets are going up and have gone up, and it's a real rally in the sense that's, what, 4 months, is that he's going to cut taxes of the corporations, and many of them, of course, don't pay taxes already or are paying very low rates. So that's positive for the markets. And he's going to deregulate. Again, whether you're in favor of the deregulation or not, you know, isn't the issue. It's the issue is it going to help the economy? And it is, in terms of making the corporations richer. Will it help the average person? Not when you're looking at, for example, I mentioned that, the 10 million jobs that were created since 2009, most of them are temporary work. But then you look at the other people that he's put in, like Wilbur Ross as Commerce Secretary, and Mnuchin as Treasury, and Cohen, the Goldman Sachs guys. If they're going to renegotiate the trade deals, then it's a positive for the economy. Because it's like a dirty word to say you have tariffs, but let's look at the reality of it. And the reality is this: I'm going to get footwear made over in a slave labor country. I'm not going to pay them anything, and then I'll bring it back here, mark it up, a couple of 100%, and sell it. So when you have tariffs, that used to be for almost forever. So that could be a positive for the economy. On draining the swamp, no. He's just brought different people in to fill the swamp in a different way, particularly when you look at the NSA, when you look at so many of the agencies and the people that he's brought in, they're still pro the multinationals in so many ways.
Right. Well, you talk about renegotiating trade deals. He's got Wilbur Ross in there, in Commerce Secretary. Wilbur Ross, of course, famously bailed Donald Trump out, I believe in the 1990s when he was facing bankruptcy. Now he's returned the favor by giving him this trade job. But, the other countries that are going to be involved in this new negotiations of Trump, of course, have the alternative of engaging more aggressively in currency wars. And so, as you've written, the currency wars lead to trade wars, which then lead to hot wars. So isn't part of the problem here that if the trade negotiations get too aggressive, then it leads to a hot war? I mean, again, getting back to the World War I scenario, there's not enough lifeboats in the global economy for every billionaire. So they're going to go to war. Your thoughts?
Well, again, yes, currency wars, trade wars, world war. And already Trump has been blaming over and over China manipulating their currency. And the facts show quite the opposite in terms that, what have they spent over $1 trillion in reserve currencies for a while ago? It bounced back now, but their reserves were under $3 trillion. They're stopping capital outflows, killing deals because so much money's flowing out. And it's one of the reasons Bitcoin prices have gone so high, because a lot of the action was coming out of China, which they're also trying to stop. So yes, you're correct. If it becomes too aggressive, it will lead to trade wars, and trade wars ultimately lead to world wars. And let's face it, we don't have a lot of smart people out there. Look what's going on in the States. The war criminal, the dunce in chief, George W. Bush, selling his comic coloring book out there on all the major networks now, as though he never started the war on terror, the Iraq war based on lies. So you could have moronic people ruining lives for hundreds of millions, if not billions, and it just keeps going on because the people don't have the courage to stop it. So it went on before, and it's going on now.
Now, Gerald, of course, you're very famous for making your forecasts and predictions. I usually ask folks, what will be the pin to prick this next bubble? We had the subprime collapse. We had the dot-com collapse. We had the program trading collapse of '87. If I'm reading your material correctly, I think you're pointing to this student loan bubble, which is Over 1 million folks are now in default on over $137 billion in debt. That's 10% of all outstanding student loan debt. Looks like it's in arrears. It's bigger than the subprime debt. Is this the bubble that will be pricked, that will start the avalanche toward 2008-style collapse? Gerald Celente.
I don't see a 2008-style collapse coming just yet from the states. It may be an outside wild card that makes it happen. And it's the student debt, it's also the subprime auto loans. And then again, we have interest rates going up. What's that going to do to the real estate market? And then look at all the subprime loans in the real estate market that aren't making the news.
Okay, well, thanks, Gerald, for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Gerald Celente of the Trends Journal. Here's the latest. Pick up your copy. Until next time, catch us on Twitter at Keiser Report. Bye, y'all.
أنا قصتي إني ألبس الجلابية عشاني. القصة بتاعتي عشان ألبس الجلابية عشان أشتغل وسط الرجال 6 أشهر بطل. أما طب هعمل منها وكني قعدت 40 يوم نفستني المرحومة وأنت تدي وده يدي الله يرحمه وسامحها.
30 or 40 years ago, she be a young lady and she cannot live between as a man. If she not a man in the street, she can stay in the street, sleep in the road. Jalabia make her no scared of anybody.
أنا أتعب ولا أتجوز تاني. أتعب وآكل الزلط وأوكل نفسي في الزلط وطين وأنا وبنتي ولا أدور على راجل تاني. عايز أبقى نظيفة ولا راجل عيفة.
मलाई चाहिँ उनीहरु किन केही हो कि भने मैले सधैँ न मृगले झिक्ने हैन न कलेज फौज केही झिक्ने हो कि नान्द्रा काट्ने हो कि भनेर भन्दा होइन यसमा होइन मामा भनेर भनौ.
We're in Nepal to find out why whole villages chose to sell their organs.
अब भनौं न दुःखसुख अब पाइयो त्यही बेचेर त यहाँ जग्गा किनेको.
People who haven't sold organs, or at least who haven't admitted to it, are often jealous of the help victims receive from charities.
एउटा फेरि उनीहरूले के फकाएको हुन्छ दुईटा किडनी हुन्छ एउटा किडनी बेच्दैमा केही पनि हुँदैन अर्को चीज कसैलाई त एउटा किडनी पलाउँछ भन्ने पनि भनेको छ यो फलफुल
जोडेर बाचा सबै टोडेर बन्धनहरू तिमीले छाडी गयौ जानी जानी.
What politicians do is something we don't do. They put themselves on the line and they get accepted or rejected. So when you want to be president, why would you want to be? Why would someone want to be president? What's it like to be president? What's it like when the phone rings at 3 in the morning? Can't be a good call. I'm interested always in the whys and the hows.
And Q Larry.
Question more.
You can see the border from here by the long steel fence that goes down this side, goes all the way down.
Like I said, this is autumn land, and this is autumn land. I have every right to be here. I have a right to go collect my food, be a part of my family on both sides of the border.
I started an organization called Arizona Border Recon. We are a standalone entity that is doing what needs to be done. In the 5 years, it's getting worse